Last summer, we went to the Big Church Festival. It was an amazing experience. There were over 30,000 other people a part of this weekend, full of music and a bunch of other stuff. Who's been to Big Church Festival? A few people. We're going again this year. So if you want to come with us, you can find out more information. Where might you be able to find out information about coming to Big Church Festival with FBC? At the Hub. 2 people recognise that. That's good. But it's a great opportunity. I really recommend it for you. But on one of the evenings, or often, we would go down into the front to be closer, in the crowd, closer to the stage. They call it the praise pit. This is a photo I took from being just at the front as the bands were playing. And I sort of noticed that my experience was very different from Louise, my wife's experience. I'm a bit taller than Louise. So I took this photo from my eye line, and then I sort of scooted down and took a photo from Louise's eye line. And this is Louise's view. She could have been anywhere. You know, her view was completely different. It's a bit like being on the tube at rush hour in London. She could have been absolutely anywhere. You know what this shows us is perspective changes everything. You know, a physical view changes from a different angle. But perspective works on more than just what we see. Perspective works on what we experience and what we encounter as well. You see, the worst of situations can shift when our perspective shifts, when our view shifts. We're in week 3 of this series called The Day That Changed the World, and we're looking at the last 24 hours of Jesus' life before his crucifixion. You know, as we run up to Easter, we're just spending some time looking at those events that happened and the impact that they've had on the world, the ripples of which have echoed throughout history and into eternity. And last week, Tim was helping us just explore the encounter that Jesus had in the Garden of Gethsemane. If you weren't here, I really recommend watching that message back or listening to it again. You know, Jesus is troubled by what's about to happen. He knows what lies before him, and he doesn't want to go through it. It shows the humanity, the human side of Jesus. And he's wrestling with God, and I don't want to have to face this. But then he says this amazing word. He says, "My Father, if it's possible, may this cup be taken from me." That's him sort of wrestling with what's about to happen. The cup, Tim talked about this, it's basically talking about, you know, the death and the events that are leading up to his death that's going to happen. If it's possible, let there be another way. But look what he says here, "Yet not as I will, but as you will." You know, Jesus' perspective as he was in the Garden of Gethsemane was difficult. The view from where he was troubling. He knew what was awaiting him, and he was wanting, you know, is there another way? But his perspective shifts. Not my will, but your will. It's all about to kick off. In the next few moments, Jesus is going to be arrested, and he knows what's waiting for him, but he's willing and waiting in that place. It's a place that's so important for him. And so he's in the Garden of Gethsemane. This is about 400 meters away from the temple, which sits in the center of Jerusalem. And the temple's on top of a hill, and you come down this hill across the Kidron Valley, and the Garden of Gethsemane is up on the other side of the hill from the Kidron Valley. And so Jesus is there. Tim told us about this last week. He's troubled. He's praying with his friends, his closest disciples. They keep falling asleep, and he goes and he's talking to them. And it says this, Matthew records this, while he was still speaking, whilst he's still talking to his disciples, Judas, one of the 12, arrived, and with him was a large crowd armed with swords and clubs, sent from the chief priests and the elders of the people. And, you know, so Jesus knows what's about to happen. Jesus knows Judas is going to come with these soldiers to arrest him, and he knows that they're going to take him off. He knows what's about to happen. But the whole thing about this is where Jesus was in the Garden of Gethsemane, he could see Judas and these soldiers probably coming out of the eastern gate of the temple. He could see them coming out of that gate. He could see them walking down the hill and across the Kidron Valley and walking up the other side towards him. At any point, Jesus could have turned and run up the hill and hid on the Mountain of Olives. He knows why they are coming for him, but he doesn't turn and run. He stays to face what is about to happen. And they come, and Judas kisses him, and that was a sign to the soldiers that he's the one to arrest. And a bunch of things happen. Peter grabs his sword and chops off the ear of one of the soldiers, and Jesus rebukes him, and he heals the soldiers. It all kicks off. But then Matthew records this sobering detail. Then all the disciples deserted him and fled. You see, from the disciples' view, it was disaster. Their teacher, their rabbi, has just been arrested, and they're afraid that's what's happened to Jesus is going to happen to them. So they run and they hide and they leave him. And the soldiers take Jesus to Caiaphas, that's the high priest, and the Sanhedrin, that's like their religious leaders, it's like their supreme court. And they're gathered because they're trying to find a way to get rid of Jesus. They've been plotting and planning. They're troubled. They don't like Jesus' popularity, and they just want to get rid of him. So they gather him in this sort of court, and they bring witness after witness, lots of false witnesses, and ask them to stand up and give testimony against Jesus. And nothing that they say really stacks up. None of their stories quite land until two people stand up and they say, this fellow said, I'm able to destroy the temple of God and rebuild it in 3 days. And this is happening now. People are saying and just hurling these accusations against Jesus. And Jesus just stands there and he doesn't say anything. And the high priest is getting annoyed and he's asking Jesus, he's demanding Jesus, look, answer this. What do you have to say for yourself? And he doesn't say anything. He says nothing. If that was me, if I was in that situation, I wouldn't stop talking. I'd want to plead and show my innocence. But Jesus stands in silence. Jesus is completely in control of this situation. He's in control of when he speaks, and he's in control of when he doesn't. And the high priest said to him, I charge you under oath. This is part of their religious law. If somebody charges you under oath, then you now have to speak. You're compelled to give an answer. I charge you under oath by the living God. Tell us if you're the Messiah, the Son of God. They're trying to catch him out. They're trying to trip him up. They're trying to find a way for them to be able to justify what it is that they want him to do. You have said so, Jesus replied. Literally, he said, if you say so. So look, you've said these words. And he could have just stopped there. Jesus could have just stopped. Yeah, you've said so. Or these are the words that you've said, is what Jesus has said. But he goes on, he says, but I say to all of you, from now on, you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the Mighty One and coming on the clouds of heaven. See, Jesus reaches back to Daniel, the prophet in the Old Testament, and he takes this title, the Son of Man, that where it's used in Daniel is a title that's pointing towards the Messiah. And as Jesus is saying these things, he's saying, I am the Messiah, I am the Son of God. And actually, you think you're in control, I'm in control over you. You think you're judging me, there'll be a time when I sit and I reign and I rule over you. As he speaks, he knowingly seals his fate. He's engineering what is about to happen. If he didn't say anything, they probably couldn't have done anything to him. Jesus isn't trapped in this situation. He's in control. He chooses his path. And the Sanhedrin and the high priest tear his robes, and the Sanhedrin, they all cry out. They say, he's worthy of death. Jesus has said these words, and they've got what they need in order to be able to carry on with their plan. You see, if the disciples were in the room at that time, their view would have been one of, it's all gone wrong. The Sanhedrin's view is one of celebration. They finally got what they need to capture Jesus and to execute Jesus. But Jesus' view is calm. It's steady. Jesus is willing to walk the path that is ahead of him. From start to finish, Jesus is not a victim. Jesus is in control over the events that led up to his arrest, to his death, and to his resurrection. And this, all of this stuff that's going on as we see through the life of Jesus and the thing that Jesus has done, Jesus is engineering his arrest. He's engineering his crucifixion. It shows us that Jesus is sovereign over all things. Now, when we say Jesus is sovereign, this is what we mean. We mean he has ultimate authority over everything and is never out of his depth or caught off guard. Now, this can be difficult for us to get our heads around, but if you're a follower of Jesus, Jesus is sovereign over all things. That means, he's sovereign over his life, but he's also sovereign over your life too. There is nothing that you experience, there's nothing that happens that is beyond his reach. He is never helpless. He is never absent. And the sovereignty of Jesus means that he's able to take even those things that he hasn't planned and use them for your ultimate good. Years later, a guy called Paul, who was one of the leaders of the early church and wrote lots of the letters that we find in the New Testament, he wrote these words to the church in Rome. He says, and we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who've been called according to his purpose. See, hear this. In all things. Paul says all things. I think what things Paul meant by that is all things. Even this thing, even that thing that you're thinking about. In all things, God is at work for good and for our good. And sometimes it doesn't feel like that. Sometimes the view from where we are, it makes this difficult to believe. But Jesus invites us to follow him. He invites us to trust him. And that trust requires us to trust that his good is beyond our good. That his good and what he defines as good is actually beyond, it's above, it's better than our definition of good. Let me ask you this question. What's the view like from here? From where you are right now, what is the view like for you? For some of you, the view from here is a hospital chair next to a bed, watching somebody you love fade and feeling completely helpless. For others, it's a quiet house after the kids have gone to another home for the weekend, and you're wondering to yourself, is this what family will feel like from now? For others, it's a desk covered in unpaid bills and final warning letters, and you're doing the maths again and again, but you still come up short. For some, it's a church seat where you sing the words, but you feel nothing. And you're not sure when God last felt close to you. For some, the view is a body that doesn't do what it used to. Chronic pain or long-term illness makes even the simple tasks feel huge. For some of you listening to this, you're asking yourself, what does it mean for Jesus to be sovereign, for Jesus to be in control? Because it feels like everything around you is spiraling out of control. If that's you, what I'm going to say next might be difficult to hear, but hold on. The sovereignty of Jesus goes beyond your immediate situation. Sometimes when the view is difficult, we're in the valley. And when you're in the valley, all you can see is the hills, the mountain that is surrounding you. Jesus was in the valley. The Garden of Gethsemane shows us that experience where he was in the valley and all he could see was the mountain that was in front of him. And he was troubled by that. He struggled to see beyond it. But then his perspective shifts. And as he saw Judas coming to arrest him, he saw beyond the mountain. He knew what was about to happen. He could see the painful path that was laid out to him. And actually, a path that would cause him to cry out, my God, why have you forsaken me? There were moments where Jesus wondered where God was. He wondered why this was happening. Jesus, who is in very nature God, Jesus, who is God, had moments where he questioned God, yet his sovereignty remained. We all have valley moments. We all have those times where we can't see beyond the mountain that is in front of us. In those moments, the sovereignty of Jesus does not mean that bad things won't happen to you. It means bad things don't get the final word. You see, the cross is the proof of that. From one angle, it's horror, it's injustice, it's betrayal, it's violence, it's shame, it's death. But from heaven's angle, the view is very different. It's one of victory, it's one of forgiveness, it's one of new life and new creation breaking in. From heaven's angle, they could see the worst thing became the doorway for the best thing. See, the same Jesus who was sovereign over that night is sovereign over this night too. The same Jesus who was sovereign and in control and not surprised by those events that led to that dark moment for him, that moment that caused him to question God. That same Jesus that was sovereign over that night is sovereign over the nights that we face, those moments that we are troubled by. The same Jesus who was in control as he went willingly to that arrest and the beating and the execution that awaited him is still in control of the things that we face. But, there's a few things that's important for us to recognize, that trusting that Jesus is sovereign and in control does not mean. It doesn't mean that we pretend the situation isn't hard or we minimize the pain. Faith is not saying it's fine when obviously it isn't. It doesn't mean we stay in situations that are abusive, that are unsafe or damaging, and call that trusting God. Sometimes the most faithful thing you can do is to get help and to get out. It doesn't mean we stop going to the doctor or the counselor or the debt advisor or the solicitor and just leave it to God. He often works through very ordinary people and very practical help. It doesn't mean we switch off our emotions and become spiritual robots. Tears, questions, doubt, even anger all belong in a life that trusts God. It doesn't mean God will fix this quickly or in the way that we want. Sovereignty is not a guarantee of our preferred outcome. It's a guarantee of his presence and his ultimate eternal good purposes. And it doesn't mean we do nothing. We still make wise choices. We still set boundaries. We still seek reconciliation where we can and obey what we already know Jesus is asking of us. So if that's what trusting that Jesus is in control is not, well, what is it? Well, often it looks like very small and very ordinary things. It looks like confessing, Jesus, I don't understand this, but I choose to believe that you haven't lost control. And, even if you can only manage to do that once a day. It looks like something else, and it looks like going to other people and saying, can you carry me through this? Can you carry my faith through this when you can't carry it yourself? It's saying to a friend or to a small group, my view from here is awful. Can you stand with me? Can you help me? Can you support me? It looks like holding on to that promise in Romans. We know that in all things, God works for the good of those who love him. Not as a cheesy slogan, but as deep, stubborn hope that in all things, even this thing, God is at work for good. That God is shaping you, that God is holding you, that God is weaving your story into his. And you might not be able to see the good yet, this good that he's at work for. You might not be experiencing that good yet, but we trust that Jesus has not lost control even when we've lost sight. There's moments when we lose sight. There's moments when the mountain that's in front of us is too big to see beyond. But Jesus has not lost control, even when we've lost sight. See, the story didn't end on Friday at the cross. It continued onto Sunday into an empty tomb where we see new life and we see resurrection and we see hope breaking forth. As the sun rose on that Easter morning, the power of darkness, the power of sin, the power of death was defeated. Death itself could not hold him, which is why we believe that he can hold us, even in the worst case scenario. Oh, there we go. Like the view from here, the view from where you are right now may be very different from the view from where Jesus is. And if that's true, if that's your experience, maybe you're in that valley moment and you can't see beyond the mountain that's in front of you, Jesus invites you to hold on. Just hold on. Keep holding on and trust that it will be all right. Now, that might not be soon. I wish I could say that holding on and trusting that Jesus is in control will mean that he fixes things quickly. That might not be the case. We might not see that the thing that we want to see shift soon. We might not see it this side of eternity, but we trust that one day it will be all right. That one day it will be better than all right. Trusting in Jesus doesn't mean that it magics away the hard stuff. We become people who are steadier in the storm when we do this because our peace isn't dependent on circumstances. Our peace is dependent on a person who doesn't move. I'm going to get the band up as we wrap up this time together. If that's you and we trust in Jesus, it helps us to become people who are able to sit with each other in the midst of pain without the need to fix it or explain it away. When we trust that Jesus is in control, even when we've lost sight, it helps us to grow in that faithful obedience, to actually have confidence in him and willing to take those steps to trust him and follow him, to keep our faith in him. It grows a deep confidence within us that whatever the view is like from here, the view from where Jesus is good. And when we finally see the view from his side, when we finally have his perspective, we will realize that he did hold us, that he did work for good. And until then, he asks us to do the only thing that we can in those moments. Hold on to him because he won't let us go. We're going to give you just some space to pause and wonder and reflect on that. And I wonder, what is the view like from where you are? For some of us, the view is great. We're on a mountain top and life is easy and life is good and we're in a great season of life. But for others of us, the view is difficult. It's dark, it's scary, it's daunting. We're not on top of the mountain, we're at the foot of the mountain, we're in the valley. We can't see beyond this thing that is in front of us. Whatever the view is like from here, Jesus invites us, he encourages us to trust him, to trust that he can see, to trust that he is in control, even if we've lost sight. The band are going to play through a song for us. And just take this moment to do whatever it is that you want to do. The words will be on the screen. You can sing along if you want. Let's just stay seated and allow God to meet us in this place and in this space. And if you have a difficult view at the moment, offer that to him. Reach out to him and allow him to meet you and comfort you. And if your view is good, offer that to him. Thank him for that. Give him worship and praise for what he's doing in your life right now.